Playing around with aspect ratio inside of CSS and on your front-end web development can be sometimes really tricky. A lot of times we want to change the way something looks. And now with a new CSS property called aspect ratio, you can do it. I'm in love with this CSS property. I want to show you exactly how to do it in this video. So generally, like, the aspect ratio pretty much does exactly what it says. It changes or controls the aspect ratio of a div container or an image. So I want to show you how to do this and how I've been using this in about 3 different ways. So let's jump right in and let's do this. Okay. So the first thing I have is a basic reset just to make sure that, I have nothing going on in the browser. So for example, let's say we have like an actual .section, class. So I'm going to make one called section, .section, nothing in it, right? And now I'm going to say, a lot of times what we've been doing is say width 100%. And then let's give this a background color of gray just so we can see it. And now this container has no height, but we either are doing like, oh, I want this to go, full bleed, so it's like 100 VH. It goes on the whole screen. Or we want to say, let's make this 300 pixels. Or we want to say, let's make this 2 REM. I don't think why you'd ever want to do 2 REM, but we've been controlling these heights. But now I want to show you this other way where you can do this using aspect ratio, and you don't even really need to specify the height. So let's say we wanted to have the bar to just be controlled by aspect ratio. So we would take off the height, and what we could leave the width because it'll handle itself on its own, but aspect ratio, and then it's basically width and height. So you'd say width divided by height, and that'll give you an aspect ratio. Look, now it's controlling for 1:1, but it keeps going down. You can see my scroll bar. It keeps going down, and that's because as I expand, the div is still going. So let's try to make this a little more visible. So let's say we give it a 3:1. So now look, it's a little more wide. So you have that aspect ratio right there where it's super, super wide. Let me bring this in, right? And that's cool because these are things we typically, like to do. We want to control, let's say we wanted to have this really long bar across this element going across the page, just like this. You see this a lot. And it's cool because you can go down to the 2:1. You can even do points. I mean, it's incredible. You can even specify pixels here if you have certain pixels, but it won't do by pixels. It'll still do by ratio. But let's say you don't know the actual aspect ratio. Now, this aspect ratio follows the common aspect ratio, like that you see on Instagram, those kind of things. So let's say you want to do a shot that kind of some sort of style here, layout that mimics something on Instagram. You could do a 4:3, 1:1. Let's see what the 4:3 looks like actually. So there it is, and even without the width, it does its job. So you don't even need the width. And what's cool about this, you can see it expanding and controlling itself, staying exactly, and it's super responsive. So you see here, as I go, it just keeps growing. I love this. That's the aspect ratio, and it's super amazing. So the other thing about this before I move on to the next thing is I was concerned that things, if you start putting in elements, that it would start overflowing. So let's say we had like, hello world, let's give an H1, hello world H1 tag, right? And let's say the hello world was super large. So let's say H1 is font size, let's go crazy. Let's say, 10 REM. Look, it's getting big. Let's give it 20. So what I want to it is overflowing subtly a little bit, but not to the point that, it's not so much about that. It's because it's overflowing because of the word itself, but the content is still expanding the container. So even though we could go 1:1 and we could go 4:1, let's see what's happening, right? So it's still trying to maintain its ratio as much as possible while still holding the content that's inside of it. That's also really important because I was worried that the content would continuously overflow as it expanded. So that's great. That's another great feature. So it holds that. The next thing I wanted to show you how I would use this is also if we have an image. So now let's say we have this bar, but we want to put an image inside of it and control the aspect ratio. So let's say we have an image tag. So I'm going to put an image inside of here, image. And let me put images. I have something image.jpg. So here we have a images. Let me see what I have here. Images.jpg. Where is the image? It's not showing here. Let me just make sure. Oh, it shouldn't be absolute. My bad. So I'm so used to like using Next.js and React that I'm using position absolute, but so it's relative inside. So you see this full blown image, right? It's huge. It's a massive image I have in my directory. Now I use object fit cover because we want to keep the semantic as opposed to background image, because background image is, I like to put the image and then use object fit because you have semantics and that's good for SEO, telling the browser that this is an image. So what you can do is use object fit cover. And then for that, you need to do width 100% and height 100%. And now, and we got to add this class here. So let's add the class. Didn't even add it. So let's put it here, image. And now we have this cover image all inside and expanded to the section. So now if we change the aspect ratio to this, the image still goes expanded to that. So if we want the image to expand to our container, it does it. It's an amazing, I just love this. I mean, it's super cool. I just can't explain how much I love this new aspect ratio feature. Then the next thing that I want to show is, so this is cool. So let's say we want to have like a bar, right? A cross, and this is super responsive. So, right, it still keeps growing. It still keeps growing all together. And you can still use your object position. You want to center the image, you want to push it to the right, left. You could still use that feature. But for now, it is just super responsive and able to do such amazing things with this aspect ratio. Next thing I want to show is, what if you wanted to place the image inside of an element, not necessarily expand? So what we can do is, let's create another container of the image. So let's say .hold image. And I'll place the image inside of there, and I'll make another parent container called .hold image. Okay, and let's say we give it position relative, and then let's say we give it a width of 30% of this. So now check this out. Now it's staying, the image is doing its thing, right? It's just kind of doing its percentage thing. It's kind of still staying inside there. And now you could even have the aspect ratio on the actual image itself. So let's say we want the image ratio to be 3:1. So now you can even control the image itself. And if we put a border, you'll see here, right, nothing is really overflowing. It's maintaining the image. And you can see here, if we even go, right, everything is nothing is really overflowing. You could see the container, you can see the image. You could play around with it. I feel like there's just so many use cases for this. It's amazing. Let's say we wanted to have a tall image. So if you want to do more like this, right, that's super tall. Let's say we want to do 1.4. right? A little more tall. Now, it's cool because if you want to crop certain things out of the image, you can do that. Now, the other thing is, let's say you want to, the other place where this comes in super handy is if you actually want to make sure certain elements of the image don't get cropped out. So if you look at the actual full image I have right here, this is the actual full image. So, you know, the woman on the left and right are getting cut out because of aspect ratio. And that's fine if this is what we want to do. But in some case, let's say we have this really nice image we got from the design team or from the marketing team. And we're like, we really want to show all that. And you can, because if you still can have this cover image, you still can use semantic image tags, and you still can keep the image while controlling the ratio. So let's say if I look at this image, when I inspect it, you could actually, it says 3036 divided by 2162. So that's the aspect ratio. So I did the math on that. It's about 1.4. So you're just taking it, you know, the width divided by the height and by here. And you could see here, this is keeping the image exactly in its ratio, but we could still control. So it's responsive, it's growing, and we could keep its actual ratio without nothing getting cut off. You can see that no one's getting cut off. It's shoulder to shoulder. And now we can say, oh, we want this to go 60% or something, but you know what I mean? But we still want it to grow in its aspect ratio. This solves a lot of problems if you aren't using, CSS to do images and this kind of thing. So it's super incredible. I urge you to check out aspect ratio. You have to start using this CSS property. As far as I know, it is used and implemented. Excuse me. As far as I know, it is supported in all browsers. If you go to can I use, you'll see. Caniuse.com. You'll see that aspect ratio has full support across everything for most modern browsers. IE is already phased out, Internet Explorer, so you don't even have to worry about that. But it's used everywhere as far as I can tell. So it's pretty amazing. Guys, use that. I'll see you guys in the comments below. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next video. If you love front-end development, CSS, web development, hit that like button and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.